All right, so it's time. I'm gonna get started, and I know we have gone through this, but I'm gonna make it like official. So since it will be recorded, and we will have the link to share with our members or anybody interested. So good afternoon. My name is Miao. On behalf of the Eanes Chinese American community, I would like to welcome the 4 Eanes board candidates to the forum this afternoon. We sincerely appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Our audience is representative of the 400 plus Eanes ISD Chinese American parents. And our presenters are Jennifer Champagne, James Spradley, Jane Stevens, and Nigel Stott. So a few housekeeping items. A huge thank you to the team that made this happen. I think most of our audiences know who they are. Please say thank you when you get a chance. Wanted to thank my daughter who helped to correct my English and did a lot of research on various subjects, and who is also the definition helper. So she's going to send out a lot of terminology, what they are or what not they are. The chat question will be taken only at the very end of the meeting with time permitting. The needed definitions and additional information will be provided in the chat. So just make sure you have the chat open. Without further ado, we will move on to the questions and answer session. The discussion in this meeting will be divided into 4 topics. Each of this topic will focus on questions the Eanes Chinese American community has, with the main ideas of the topics already emailed to the candidates and shared with the audience. To keep this discussion as unbiased as possible, we will be asking a different candidate to go first in answering a question prompt assigned to each topic. Following that, the remaining candidates will address the questions in alphabetic order in rotation, similar to what you guys went through for the elementary school forum. Our first, we will start with the conversation and revisit a subject that impacted every one of us and is still fresh on our minds, the COVID-19 pandemic. The discussion points for this topic are: how would you rate from 1 to 10, 1 for very poor, 10 for very satisfied, our district's handling of the pandemic, specifically about the in-person and online study options? 2, if we have to do this again, what things would you like to do differently? We will start with Jennifer Champagne. Since you are one of the current board members, could you list 2 things that the district handled well and 2 things you would like to do differently in addition to answer the questions?
Sure, thank you. And thank you so much to the Chinese Parents Association for having this forum and allowing us the time to speak to all of you. So, you know, this past year was the most challenging year that education has ever faced. We've never seen anything like it. Being forced to shut down and then to reopen in a new environment. Our district was forced to change its delivery model on a dime overnight. We went off to spring break. Our leadership had the foresight to send home our technology with our students so that we were prepared for what we thought might be a few weeks of shutdown, which ended up being the rest of the year. So a few of the things that I think that we did well, we were prepared with technology. We were blessed with technology in our district, and we had teachers that knew how to use it. The other thing that we did well was have an administration who continued to plan. They worked tirelessly during the summer. In June of 2020, they released the first plan of back to school, of how we would proceed educationally, getting our students back in the classroom. There were some changes as we faced the changing nature of COVID and differing requirements from the Texas Education Agency. But the ability to get kids back in school as effectively as we did lies solely on the ability of our administration to plan. What are some things that we were challenged with? The biggest challenge was the delivery model, in my opinion. How do you allow some flexibility for families as they chose what was best for them and their student, whether they wanted to be in person or remote? And how does that impact our staff and their ability to teach our students? I think that's something, and I'm looking back at the questions that you sent us. You said, what are some things that we could do differently, or what would we learn? What I take from this is what have we learned if this were to ever happen again? And it's incumbent on us to examine every part of this crisis. Where could we go forward, talk to other districts and find out what was effective for them? I think if there was one thing I would change, it would, or try to examine, is figure out a way where we could have students who were remote in classrooms with remote students and students that were in person in classrooms with in-person students. That again is extremely challenging when we're looking at space constraints with in-person and trying to have social distancing. So, there aren't really great answers there as far as how we could change our model, but I think we need to examine every possibility there as we look at move forward. What lessons have we learned? How can we implement what has been successful and what needs to change? Thanks.
James,
Do you want me to go? Yeah, you want me to go next now? Okay. So I was thinking about a couple of things that I would like to change if we had to do this again. Specifically, two things come to mind. First, our teachers had a difficult time. It was difficult on all of us to handle these changes that came about because of COVID. The need to go remote. Most all of us had to do that with work and in our jobs and watch our children do that from home. And so the first thing that I would like us to focus on would be teacher support. And our teachers never signed up to teach remote education. I don't think that we had much training on how to teach a class full of children over Zoom, because we never expected that to happen. We all love and want to have in-person education. And so we weren't prepared for that way. Our teachers were under a tremendous strain to pivot their lessons for how they could teach these effectively via Zoom back in March. And I noticed and started hearing from teachers that they had one device, perhaps a laptop, but they didn't have two devices, a laptop plus an iPad. And they were finding it increasingly difficult to manage the Zoom and look at their notes and display their lessons, et cetera, because they didn't have two devices. And so I quickly, and you can go back and listen to the recordings in the board meetings, I'm asking our technology department, please give them the technology they need to help our students and make sure that we can make this transition as smooth as possible. We have a lot of technology. We did a great job of giving our students their iPads when they went home for spring break. And so I'm not criticizing our technology department in any way. I'm simply saying that going forward, I would be sure that we were quick to respond to teacher needs with respect to teaching children. The second thing that I think that we've seen, and it's been called out, is cheating. And I would want to make sure that we address cheating so that it's fair for all children. And we need to do a better job online that way. I think that's my timer, right?
Correct. Jen?
Thank you very much. So I would say through the spring of last year, I think everyone did the best they could under some very trying circumstances. But overall, I would give the response from the district a 1. I think we failed. So we have a board that in March of last year, though they decided to begin to meet weekly, They voted to give away the oversight authority over Dr. Leonard so that he would have autonomy to make decisions. And I believe leaders lean in during times of trouble and not let go. In the summer, we polled our parents, and over 70% said we wanted to return to school. And yet 2 weeks later, this district sent a letter to the TEA saying our parents did not want to return. And in that letter, they set a standard that still to this day has not been achieved in terms of hospitalizations, that they were recommending those standards be the standards before our kids are allowed back in the classroom. So I think the lack of transparency in what was going on and what was really going on, I think we were being told there was a plan, but the actions of the letter to the state were opposite of maybe what we were being told. I think letting go of oversight, I think these things are pretty concerning. As we got toward the fall, we were able to get the kids back in school through the advocacy efforts of so many families in the district. And then we began to learn that so many parents had reached out to offer the district support, building plastic desk shields, for example, at no cost. And the district, they didn't get back to the parents. And so I was beginning to get messages from teachers asking for PPE. We spent several $1,000s out of our own pocket. We raised money. We helped get the gloves and the masks and the desk shields and anything we were asked for back into the room. So I just think overall we could have done a lot better job of being coordinated and tapping into the incredible resources of our community that were available. I also was concerned about the lack of recognition and engagement on the mental health aspects of what was going on with the shutdowns. Everything from, you're right, James, the cheating was rampant. My kids were dealing with it significantly at the high school level, and I heard my friends at other levels dealing with it as well. All of these things were really tough beyond just the circumstances that kids were and parents were already dealing with. So I think overall we could have done a lot better job, and I think starting with tapping into the resources of our own district. We're a district of problem solvers. The last thing I was concerned about with this district was just an overall general, I guess I would say, guiding principle of optimism. I believe optimism can carry you a long way in this world, and where there's a will, there's a way. And we don't see that out of this district. We see hand wringing, and we see I would say sort of shutting in as opposed to reaching out to the community. No plan to graduation last year. So many other districts figured out how to do it outdoors safely. No prom this year. So many of the high school kids are so disappointed. Still no announced plan for graduation this year, although I do know a plan is coming, which is great. But I just think overall we can do a lot better. We're a community of problem solvers, and when we work together, I know we can do great things.
Well, going last, a lot of the things have been talked about. Looking at your question, how do you rate from 1 to 10 the district's handling of the pandemic? I think the IT department gets a 10. I mean, the fact that we went on spring break and they pivoted from a in-person to a remote platform, within 2 weeks, and got us back on track to be able to finish the year, I think is awesome. I think, and Jen Stevens talked about this a bit, the summer, I think there was and this is from me watching the board meetings and getting the communication from that, I think the district was anticipating going full remote for the fall, and it seemed like they were going to be flat-footed when the governor came back and TEA said you need to get the kids back in school. And so there was a lot of effort, there's a lot of actually divide that happened in the community that I think leadership from the board could have been much better. There was parents that wanted to get their kids back in school and wanted to know what the plan, and they were demonized. And they were talked about as, wanting to kill teachers. I mean, that's how bad it got. And it didn't need to happen that way. And I think, and there is still a divide today from that. So that was disheartening. Jen Stevens talked about the mismessaging from the district. They poll, they get numbers. Parents want their kids to be back in class, and then there's a stall asking for additional time. So, and then not leaning into community. We have, like Jen said, we have a lot of loving, very philanthropic people that want to help, and we didn't tap into them, other than having, you know, people force this to happen. So the PPE wasn't there. You know, my kids, I have 2 kids in special ed. It was very difficult for them to do remote, and so I was really pushing to get my kids back into the classroom. And to this day, that, you know, the cheating, you talked about the cheating. I almost get that weekly, Dad, this is not fair. This is not fair. And then there's the disconnect with the teachers on online. It's online learning. It's tough because they're looking a lot of times at a stagnant picture of a student, and they're not knowing if that student's paying attention or engaged, that kind of thing. So it's very difficult for them to do that and then do at the same time in class. You know, they did yeoman's work. I mean, my heart goes out to them, for the teachers. But you know, what could we have learned from this? We definitely, if we're going to go in online, we need to have all the kids need to be online with presence, with their cameras on. I think there's you know, getting the students back in just communication. I think in general, I think the communication was lacking. I think people would have rallied. Sorry.
Okay, I think my alarm is not working because you don't hear me. So to make sure that we are fair to everybody, get the equal time, I'm going to have to just cut in to tell you that it's time for the next one. So the next one, we're going to talk about the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI for short. The questions are, to your opinion, has our district done enough for DEI? Name specific items to illustrate its success or failure. What actions has the district taken or planned to promote DEI? Why do you view these actions as having positive or negative effects? What 2 specific areas do you expect to change about DEI with or without the consultant in the future? So as many of us are aware, this year, Eanes School District hired a DEI consultant named Mark Gooden. One of the things that is occasionally brought up during discussion about DEI is the critical race theory, CRT for short. Jen Stevens, you have stated before that you will oppose any effort to bring the CRT into Eanes. Could you please explain how the CRT would affect our district, and why you are against it before answering the above questions?
Sure, I'm happy to. So, critical race theory is racist. It divides people based on the color of their skin and teaches division instead of unity. And you need to look no further than the research that any of us can easily do. In fact, it was on a morning national news show this morning. The division that is happening in the schools where critical race theory is being implemented, California, New York, and throughout the country. So we're not doing that here. I will work day and night to stop critical race theory from entering this district, because it ruins excellence, it ruins children, it ruins communities, and it divides under the guise of claiming teaching unity. In my opinion on DEI overall, I think if you're a supporter of DEI, I think you should be absolutely appalled at the way this district has handled the approach to DEI thus far. And I'll tell you why. When a district hires someone, and I've open records requested it, as have many people in this district, there was no research done on who we are hiring. There's one memo, 4 or 5 pages long, that exists. That was the total amount of effort that it appears the district put into choosing the consultant. And then we hired the consultant illegally with no bid. And so if you're supportive of DEI, then you have to want all families to have some buy-in into this process and to be interested in seeing it be successful. And instead, what we saw was from the get-go, an alienation of so many families. So you have a district that stumbled out of the gate. Just in the last, I think, March board meeting, one of our board members, our board chair, mentioned that we really don't have any metrics. We have no idea what what roadmap we're on. We have no definitions of success. So in my opinion, if you support DEI, you should be very upset with the way things have gone. So what actions should we take to promote it or change it? I would say this, I think we have to start over. Look, I think Eanes is a loving community. And are there situations where we should be doing better? Are there situations where there's challenges? Of course there are. And those have to be addressed. But as a community, we can't come together and unify if we don't start from a place where all voices are included. We have a DEI committee that is anything but diverse. This sets our community up for failure. So I would start over, and I'd start at the Eanes way. I'd include all viewpoints and have a thoughtful conversation. I also want to be clear that I support diversity, I support inclusion, and I'm fine with equity of opportunity, but I'm not fine with equity of outcome. We can't be changing our grading standards or compromising our excellence in any way. So in my opinion, if we want DEI and we want to have a conversation about engaging that curriculum in our schools, then we have to come at it from a place of teaching the golden rule, keeping out all the political agendas that seem to be permeating through the path of DEI. I feel like a door was opened over here under the guise of diversity and inclusion, and then very quickly we're going off track in a different direction. The transgenderism being exposed into the elementary schools, for example, very concerning. We have to maintain the parent-child relationship and respect the parent-child relationship and make sure that our teachers have the core curriculum being taught in the classrooms and that they're not expected to be teaching political agendas that are hurtful to our children and hurtful to the excellence of our community. Two specific areas that I would change about DEI with or without the consultant. Well, I'd fire the consultant immediately. And I would start over by doing a needs assessment. What are the needs, school to school? What are the opportunities to do better? And then what are the specific measures of success that we know we need to achieve to fix those things? If we don't start that way, we'll never know how to even reach success and we'll remain divided. Thank you.
Thank you. Nigel, you actually ahead of your time.
So, so the question regarding critical race theory, there's a op-ed in the New Hampshire Leader, person by the name of Lily Tang Williams, and she's a Chinese immigrant, and she talks about the concerns of critical race theory. It's a pretty good article. I think it defines what we potentially could be facing here. This goes back to the Mao Cultural Revolution and putting people in boxes or camps, and for whatever reason they have no control over, they're separated. So I believe that we're all created equal. I believe that that we should treat others like we want to be treated. In terms of equity and inclusion and diversity, I think we should promote diversity. I think we promote inclusion. I think kids should be treated the same. I think parents want their kids to go to school and learn core curriculum. I think they want to hope that they have a nurturing environment, that they're kind to each other, that these kids can have the skill sets to have critical reasoning or critical thinking, and they can make decisions on their own. What they're afraid of is a situation where you've got an indoctrination, and made into an activist. I think most parents don't want that. And so there's a concern from a lot of parents that this is just a path to something that honestly, it's been tried before. There's case studies, like you can go to the West Coast. I moved from California, it's there. So this isn't new. What it does is it siphons off a lot of resources from core curriculum. And so I would ask, what is the cost of this program when it's fully implemented? What is the cost? And no one can answer that. Okay, we can say there's a consultant's 170 grand plus another
time. Jennifer?
Thank you. Yeah, back to your question about DEI. In my opinion, the district has not done enough yet to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. We see examples across our community of, unfortunately, hate at times, of inappropriate language being used in our classroom, outside of our classroom, racial slurs by both adults and students. Unfortunately, there's room for growth, and we need to make progress in this area. Just this week, there was an incident that has been reported on social media at one of our elementary schools with hateful language being written on the playground. Fortunately, it was removed before any students saw it. These are things that are just some of the handful of examples that we've seen recently that show that we have room for improvement and that we need to work on this. Last summer, I spent hours speaking with families about the ways that they were impacted by bullying, by hateful language, by their children being faced with slurs on the playground, in the classroom. And we have kids in our district that don't feel safe, that feel like they don't belong. And the fact of the matter is that when those things happen, we have poor outcomes for our students. They can't learn as well when they're in an environment where they don't feel welcomed and where they don't feel that they belong. Our goals around DEI are essential to improving outcomes for every child in this district and to ensuring that they have a place to learn and that they can be the best person that they can be. I'm proud of some of the things that we have done.
It's time.
Oh, goodness, sorry.
So a couple of things. First of all, there's this idea that we illegally hired the consultant, and I've been in this community for 20 years. Many of you on this call have worked with me. We had an attorney in the room when we talked about this contract. I can assure you that I would not do anything illegal. I would not have party to anything illegal, and our attorney would not allow us to do anything illegal. So this idea that we illegally went out and hired a consultant is ridiculous. The fact is that the question about have we done enough, and frankly, I don't know that anyone knows yet how much needs to be done. It's a difficult question to answer because of that. We had 1,921 parents and students telling us, please take action via a petition that was sent to us. We had hundreds of current and former students coming forward and saying, telling us about events that I don't even want to mention on this call, ugly things that happened in our school. Obviously, there's a need to look at this, and we need to assess this, and we need to find out exactly what we need to do to address this. The consultant was hired. I don't know where the 170,000 number comes from. I've never seen that number. I looked at the contract yesterday. I didn't see that number. We're paying for this out of a teacher training budget that we have, that we put in budget every year. With COVID, we were unable to send teachers to these training sessions. So we were able to bring in help in the form of Dr. Gooden. I think we have work to do here. And I think we are committed to that work. And I think that the two things that we've done to show that we're committed to that work is bringing in help, because obviously we haven't been able to address this ourselves yet, and also forming a committee. And the committee is made up of people who signed up, hundreds of community members who signed up. We selected a very diverse committee to help us address this. And I stand by what we've done. I think we've done the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are moving on to our next question. Actually, somehow related. We're talking about discrimination, racism, and the related subjects. So for this one, I actually composed our community's questions. We came up with a different subject for each one of you. So everyone will get 5 minutes to answer to the specific set of questions that is addressed to you. And these are written so as I was finishing composing the questions, so in no particular order. Uh, Racism and discrimination. This is a subject dear and near to our heart, especially as we have seen an rise in anti-AAPI hate crimes. As some of us probably aware, yesterday was declared as a national anti-hate Asian hate crime day by our Mayor Steve Adler. So that says the degree of these crimes. So we will ask each candidate a set of questions, and based on the information we have gathered through various forums or meetings you attended and other media. As a parent, I, as well as many other ISD parents, were shocked to find out about kids playing a game called Kill the Asian on the playground. But very little was shared by the district, which led to all kinds of rumors flying. James Spradley, as you are a current member of the Eanes ISD board, would you please tell us which school this was at, what kind of game it was, what really happened on the playground, and what actions the board has taken to not only reprimand students, but to also make sure this derogatory situation does not repeat itself?
Yeah, Meow, thanks for the question. I got to be very careful and say, I don't think I can disclose details about this event. And it's because, but we'll talk about it and I will give you my thoughts, but I have to say that when it comes to children's identities and where they are and where this is happening, you've got to understand that's very sensitive. And I would not feel right about disclosing any of that specific information without talking to our attorney about that. I hope you understand. As far as the incident, we did hear about it. I've talked to people whose children were there and involved in that. I've asked our administration to please go back and look at this. The way that it was reported to the district officially was that the children were playing Eat the Asians or Beat the Asians. And apparently they had divided into like 4 little teams on the playground, and there were different sort of ethnic, if you will, groups on the playground playing this game. And maybe it was sort of a game of tag where they went around and played tag with each other or something. But I got to say that whether it was Beat the Asians or Eat the Asians or Kill the Asians, it's not that first word, right? That's the problem here. It's the last 2 words that are the problem there. Why would we want our children thinking about dividing into those sort of groups? I mean, I understand being proud of your culture, and you know, I went to university at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. I'm a Texan, and when I was up there, I was proud to say I was a Texan, and I did a Texas culture night as if Texas is a different country, because kind of it is. I'm proud of that, and I'm okay being called a Texan personally. But why would we want children dividing up into groups like that? And so to me, by the way, I think that we need to do a lot more investigating to find out all the details on this. I don't have all the details on this yet. We're working on that. But I think that if this event happened as it's been described, I think it points very strongly to the need for our children to understand why things like this are wrong. And I appreciate that parents want to teach this at home, and I hope they do. But when it comes into our school buildings, when it happens on our property, when our teachers witness this, we need to make sure our teachers understand how to address this. And not from the perspective of punishing children for being children, but from the perspective of coaching children to understand why these kinds of things are wrong and how the game could have been played differently. I think from what I hear, they pivoted to being dolphins and zebras and giraffes. And, you know, then they were playing their game with using animals as the names of the different groups, which is, in my mind, much preferable to Asian, for example, and Beat, Eat, or Kill the Asians is unacceptable to me. So that's my perspective on that. You know, I think that we are continuing to find out more information and are working hard to get to the bottom of this. And I think that there's more coaching of staff and students to come on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you will follow up and let us know what are especially the answer to the last part of the question, how the actions were taken to make sure this will not happen again.
I'd be happy.
So we're going to move on to the next one. As most, if not all, of our audiences have here today, all Chinese Americans, we felt the need to address a post by Jen Stevens. In this post, dated July 1st, 2020, you called COVID a, quote, stupid China-made virus, end quote. Could you tell us your thoughts and the intentions of using such a phrase?
Yes. Well, first, the virus did come from China. And actually, last summer, I was in a graduate school class studying the communication response to COVID-19 from the perspective of the United Nations. And I was writing a graduate paper through the summer about that. And what I learned was the delay from the Chinese government in reporting out what had happened and the discoveries that they had made about the virus cost hundreds of thousands, if not more, lives across the planet. And many countries, including India particularly, took a lead, but Japan, the United States, many countries were very critical of their slow response period. So I don't know that I was necessarily thinking of my research paper when I did or did not put something on social media, but I know I spent a lot of time trying to understand the communication timeline and response and the correlation between how was the communication handled, both from China originally, as well as then through the UN and the World Health Organization, and then also through each of our individual countries. So I don't think it was meaning beyond that. But that is the circumstance under which I was looking at COVID through the summer. I will say that at that time, and with the benefit of hindsight now, of course, I wish I hadn't said that. If it offends anyone, I wouldn't want to say something like that. But at that time, and in the context of knowing I was studying that, I have to believe that that's where my head was. Thank you.
I originally intended after each candidate speak that I had failed to ask if anybody had any comments. So we'll get back to James's comment, but since Jane just finished, I would like to ask if any one of your other candidates has any comment on this subject. James, you have unmuted.
In reference to the kill the Asian question, is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I came out publicly. I think it's terrible to hear that. You know, I mean, no, it's racist. You know, I think it's terrible. You know, I think and I was actually criticized for my answer to this, but you know, we have policies in place right now that need to be enforced. You know, what's hard to understand is that there was a Freedom of Information Act request that came out that said that the district, this is from the district, said that this incident did not happen the way it was portrayed. So James said there's other things, I don't know if he's privy to or not, but there's confusion now that this actually happened. And if it happens, terrible, right? And we should grow from it. And those kids should, you know, be disciplined, and they should be, you know, they need to be reprimanded. We have policies in place for this, but there's a disconnect, there's a distrust that the district isn't communicating, that there's real issues that are happening. So that's all I have to say on that.
All right, why don't we just open it up? You can comment on either one, James or Jen's topic.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, I think in some ways they kind of go hand in hand. We've seen an increase in hateful speech. We've seen an increase in derogatory terms being casually used. And our kids are listening. Our kids are listening to what we do, or to everything we say. They see what we do. They see the actions that we take, and they model that. And they follow the example of the people that are around them, the adults in their lives. And we as adults have to be very careful. We have to set the example for our kids and how we choose to teach them what's right and what's wrong. And that includes in the subtleties of our language, whether it's intended as harmful or not. And really that's a big reason that we have had this focus on DEI. It's a big part of the reason that we're spending money from our budget on professional development, so that when incidents like this at the elementary school arise, our teachers know how to handle it appropriately. Like James, I can't speak to details. We're bound by confidentiality in the same way that we couldn't speak about a child's grades. We can't speak about a child's discipline that has happened. I do think that there's a disconnect between the reports of the parents and the administration. I've also asked for clarity on that. And we need to get to a place where we address these things as openly as we can while protecting a child's privacy, and effectively changing the desire to use this type of language to make any child feel unwelcome in the classroom. So thank you.
All right, so yeah, about the game, the Killed Asian game, I think we mentioned earlier that James and both Jennifer and James, I hope you're committed to find the bottom line and let us know what you will, the district will put policies in place to ensure this will not happen. I have a comment to Jen's commentary or discussion that we hope now you now know phrases like this have a harmful implication towards the Asian American community, and that they are contributing to the rise of anti-hate crimes. We are, a lot of us, our families, our friends are recipients of those hate crimes. We request that such a xenophobic wording will not be repeated in the future.
No, I do understand. Sorry, I do understand that, and I appreciate your giving me the chance to answer it. I definitely understand what it feels like to be subjected to bullying and have people coming at you from negative points of view, throwing accusations towards you or attacking you for your beliefs or what you look like or your ethnicity. It's all wrong and it all needs to stop. So I completely agree. I can't remember which of the panelists said it a minute ago, but whomever it was right. We have to have a zero tolerance for these kinds of things, and it does affect our children. Our kids are watching. And so I commit to doing the best I can, and I would ask that all of us commit to doing the best we can to stop hate speech of any type. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think, Jennifer, early on, you somehow touched on this one, but I'm going to go through it. And for the ones you touched on, you can probably just skim it through. For Jennifer Champagne, you stated that you have spoken with numerous families who have shared their experiences with racism at Westlake. Could you give some examples of what you heard? Have these stories changed your view on racism within the Eanes community? How do you plan to make Eanes ISD into a welcoming, anti-racist place for minority students?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer. Yes, I have spoken with families. I've spoken with individual students. I spent a lot of time doing that last summer as school opened up this fall. You know, they would reach out to me with their stories, and they wanted me to have a better, as a board member, to have a better understanding of things that their children have faced in the classroom, on the playground, outside of school. There were unfortunate incidences of Zoom bombing early in the fall, where racial slurs were used. There have been kids who, you know, beyond this incident we just talked about, there are other incidents where students are on the playground and have racial slurs thrown at them. There have been incidences where students have talked to me about the casual use of inappropriate language, and that those words are tossed around and other kids laugh. It's those kinds of things that make students feel unwelcome in our classroom and in our community, and it's appalling. I think Eanes is a great place. It's one of the best school districts in the country. There's no doubt about it. We have outcomes that are unparalleled. But the fact is that there are areas where we can do better, and this is one of them. And this is why, hearing all of these stories, listening to families, listening to their feedback, that I committed to hiring the best diversity and inclusion consultant that we could find, highly qualified, who could help us develop programs in our schools and develop and build our professional development programs so that our staff is able to better address the needs of all of our students. I'm really proud of that. And as I continued to hear feedback from our families of color, of different ethnicities, different religions, it solidified my commitment to make DEI a priority at the board level. Because when you make it a priority at the district level, at the highest level, then it can become part of our everyday work, so that we can devote some resources to professional development and a continued focus on it. I hope that it continues to remain a priority in this district. It's not something that we can afford to let go. It's not something that we can afford to do for only 1 year and then say that's enough and move on and we don't want this anymore. We need to commit to it for the long term. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks.
Thank you. Any quick comments on that?
I have a comment about it, which is, again, if we want, and I do truly believe, of all the top ranked high schools in the country, according to U.S. News and World Report, Eanes Westlake High School is the most diverse. And I think that's fabulous. I mean, the more our kids see diversity in every perspective in which it can be defined, the better, right? We all learn from each other in those differences, and that's great. Can we do better when these instances arise? Absolutely. Should we be committed to, respecting and loving and including each other? Absolutely. But if we're going to do that, then we need to do it in a way that doesn't alienate any part of our community. And currently, there is a large part of our community that feels very alienated by the way that the DEI process has taken place thus far. There's a part of our community that feels very pushed aside, very discounted, very disregarded. And we're not going to achieve success in something that is a priority if we do not embrace each of the various viewpoints that exist within our community, pull everyone together, sit at the table, meet where we can meet, agree to disagree if we have to disagree in places, and unify as a district toward the greater good. That's what has to happen to achieve success in anything we try to do.
We're going to move on to the next. Nigel Stout, you have said you, quote, don't subscribe to the fact that the ISD is systemically racist, end quote. Could you please elaborate on what you mean by this? Please give specific examples.
Sure. I think that Eanes is a great school, district. I think there are problems. I think there's kids that do things that are stupid. I think there's kids that say racist things. There's kids that bully kids. I mean, I have a special needs kid that was bullied a lot, and because he thinks differently and he acts differently. And so we have policies and procedures in place to deal with those situations. My son, I would say, what happened, and then nothing, Dad, they didn't do anything after, when I complained. So you can't fix something, if you already have things in place and you're not willing to go ahead and fix those issues and address those issues, then, you know, hiring a consultant, having a whole program in DEI, if you can't even do the simple things of bullying that I've experienced, I'm not, you know, I don't have a racist, you know, mentality. I've never been, you know, a different race. So I can't relate to that. But you know, from what I see coming from Los Angeles, coming here, it's a very loving community. And are there bad apples? There's bad apples everywhere. I just don't think that there's a system in place to keep people down because they're different. I just don't. And so if you look at the Asian community, for instance, you know, at Eanes, they outperform white students in general. If you want, so, you know, how does that work? You know what I'm saying? So I don't think there's a system in place. There's kids that need help. They need to be lifted up. They need extra support. That I'm all for that. We need to lift everybody up, but we don't need to pull people down to get to that same result. So hope that answers the question.
I guess I did not understand exactly the last comment. What do you mean by I understand that we need to raise all the kids up, but I do not understand why you do not need to pull somebody down. What are you referencing to?
Well, I'm just, you know, this is just going back to the concept of you know, critical race theory and put people in camps. You know, one is oppressed and one's the oppressor. That was my comment. I think it just divides people and causes more racism. In terms of, you know, how do we deal with kids that are racist? I mean, we have policies and procedures in place. Let's deal with it. Let's teach those kids. Let's put some, you know, whatever suspensions, whatever the policies in place. Let's actually enforce it and the kids feel safe to be able to go and report that kind of thing. And so I think if you did that and you encouraged kids to treat each other like they want to be treated, you know, I think we can get past these issues. And each case is, you know, case by case basis. And so I don't know if that helps clarify.
I wanted to make a very general comment, right? This racism, the hate crime versus being bullied because the kids being mean, they are very different. They are fundamentally different, and there are lots of researches, articles, lectures talk about that. I do not want to go through that. I hope you will all stand at the victim's side of point of view from this point to see why we feel different. Why, when we talk about the crimes against us, just because we are Asian American, it's very different when you just say, yeah, but my child is also bullied. So please just give us the benefit of doubt. And then I'm not addressing any one single individual person here. I just wanted to throw that there just so that that is not very helpful to me. And I'm sure to many of my country people also.
And I didn't mean to downplay it at all. I'm just saying, you know, racism's terrible. I think we should deal with those situations. I'm saying there's other things that are happening to the kids that shouldn't take place. And until the district makes this a priority to go after that particular item or issue, I should say, then, you know, kids aren't going to feel safe to come forward, and we're not going to be able to address these issues. So I didn't mean any disrespect, like it was one's better than the other or what, but racism in general is terrible. I mean, it divides us. It's ignorant. It's hurtful. There's no room for it. So I hope that I didn't mean to discount that. I was just saying from my experiences with bullying, I could see how that hurts.
Understand. So we are moving on to our final questions, and it's more about a district budget and others. So, and we'll ask the candidates to speak in reverse alphabetic order, just for the fun of it. So the questions already presented to you. Do you support the eliminated school bus transportations? Do you agree with the district's handling of the controversy regarding the reading of the book, Call Me Max? What is your vision of the gifted and talented program? Do you support the unisex bathrooms at the schools? What, if anything, do you think needs to be changed to the current AP courses? Do you support the increase of cultural enrichment education? By the way, I think that's one of the better ways to solve this racial discrepancies or discriminations, such as adding Chinese history in addition to the European history classes. What do you plan to propose? And the final one is, do you feel our district teachers are properly compensated for their work? How would you change the situation if you feel not? So the reverse alphabetic order, we will start with Nigel, I believe, if I get the alphabet right.
Sure.
Each one
So
gets,
do you want me to go through each one of the questions and answer? How do you want to work that?
it's meant to answer all the questions. If,
okay, good. All right.
If any of them needs discussion, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. So do you support eliminating school bus transportation? Quick answer is no. I don't want buses to go away for our kids. My kids enjoyed it. I think there's parents that are at work that rely on that transportation. So no, I don't want to eliminate it. Do you agree with the district's handling of controversy? Okay, so regarding the book, Call Me Max. So this is one of those areas that I think parents in general don't want the schools addressing. You know, if you look at that video and you watch it, and I did, you know, one of the big things that pops out to me is in the book that the author says that my mommy and my daddy made a mistake calling me a boy or a girl. And I just think that fundamentally just undermines the parents' rights. Does Max have the same rights as any other kid? Absolutely. In that book, that kid Max should be treated the same way with the same rights, but the kid should not have extra rights. So we should love that person, we should encourage that person, but at the end of the day, the subversion of the parent role, I think most parents don't want that. So that's my take on that one. What is your vision for the gifted and talented program? So my older son was in this. My youngest son was someone that he's special ed. He's very, very mechanically inclined. And so he was precluded to be part of that because he didn't make the academic side of it. There's two sides. There's the art, gifted part of it, and then there's the academic side. So I think the gifted and talent program is awesome. I think we should look at potentially getting kids that are special ed that have a gift of instruments that are highly gifted but don't necessarily figure out on the academic side, if that makes sense. So there should be some exceptions on that. Do you support unisex bathrooms at school? No, I don't. What, if any, do you think needs to be changed to the current AP courses? I don't think we need to do it. I think we need to continue to provide these. I think that's why people move to this district. They want their kids to take AP classes and they want to be able to go to great universities. So I think the programs run well. Are there improvements? I'm sure there are, but right now, that's why people are moving here. Do you support the increase in cultural enrichment education, such as Chinese history, in addition to European history classes? I absolutely do. We have Spanish immersion. I don't see why we can't look at doing like a Mandarin immersion. I think that would be something, with all the trade that happens with China. I think we would benefit our kids to be able to speak Mandarin. So I'm all for it. Do you feel our district teachers are properly compensated for their work? You know what? They have the toughest job in the world, I think, right now. I mean, they're in double duty. We're limited on what we can give. The board, voted to not give pay raises. I think we got to figure out how do we do that. I think we need to get the best and brightest teachers, and we need to go out and get them, and we need to pay them, and pay them to stay too. I mean, that's one of our issues too, is attrition. So I think that's all for now. Thanks.
Thank you. I realized that 2 minutes is too short. So while Nigel was talking, I adjusted. I'm going to extend that to 4 minutes. I know we're passing our time. We were supposed to finish now. Does anybody have urgent issue has to leave like now? Can we finish this? Great, great. We'll continue. So Jen.
Thank you. Yes, I'm glad you gave more than 2 minutes. I was wondering how fast I could talk. There's a lot of good questions, and I appreciate the chance to be able to finish up this discussion before we say thank you for the opportunity today. So getting right to it, do I support eliminating the school bus transportation? No, for all the reasons Nigel said. We absolutely must maintain our bus transportation system. Do I agree with the school district's handling of the controversy regarding the book Call Me Max? No, and I'll tell you why. There's a few things. First of all, I do concur with what Nigel said, that I believe that content completely violates the parent-child relationship and is entirely inappropriate for our school district to play that kind of a role. Second of all, there was no transparency and no process in place by which this content even made it into the classroom. And when this happened, I went to Jeff Arnett and I said, what if it had been the Bible? Let's throw out the content that was read and let's throw in a different kind of content. All the way across the board, we've got to have consistency in what kind of curriculum is being taught. We have to have systems and processes by which these things are approved. And we have to be transparent with parents so that they know what to expect. My other problem with the way that this was handled is that the district came out and let us know that it had been done in one classroom. Only when the Austin American-Statesman wrote a story did we all learn that it was actually read in two or shown in two different classrooms. So again, back to transparency and consistency in communicating to parents. The other problem that I have with this content is that this subject is a highly, highly sensitive subject. And I have a friend who has a niece who is transgender. And when I visited with her about this situation, she said to me, Jennifer, our family is a loving family. And we have spent years and years and years and thousands of dollars through counseling and coming together to support each other through our niece's decision. And it took so much work and so much counseling. And she said, I can't imagine, first of all, the questions and the sensitivity of the subject that might have just sort of been, exposed in a laissez-faire way to these children, and what kind of ramifications that might have on a child who is transgender. And second of all, back to teaching core curriculum. Our teachers are not highly trained in all these areas of sensitive topics, and they don't have the time. We don't have the money. We can't ask them to do all things for all people. We have to stick to the core curriculum. We have to emphasize kindness and acceptance and love, but we cannot go down these paths. I think that's all I have to say. I was pretty upset about the whole thing. What is my vision for gifted and talented? I agree. We have to preserve excellence in this district. I think the gifted and talented program is something that really sets Eanes apart. I will say that my friends who've gone through the application process have been frustrated again with the transparency of things. They haven't necessarily, if the child hasn't been accepted or whatever, they haven't always received constructive feedback or information. So I think there could be some transparency opportunities there, but absolutely we need to keep our gifted and talented program. Do I support unisex bathrooms? Absolutely not. And what, if anything, needs to change with our current AP courses? I agree. AP courses, and again, the excellence and the opportunities for the curriculum here in the district are what bring people to Eanes, and it is what drives our excellence. So I absolutely support our AP courses. Do you support the cultural enrichment education? Yes, and I completely concur with your statement a moment ago that, by exposing our children to various cultures and learning about the history of various cultures, that is how we teach diversity and inclusion and respect for others. And so I very much support the idea. And do you feel that the districts are properly compensated for their work? No, I think we need to pay our teachers more. I think we need to find a way to provide pay raises. I think teacher recruitment and retention is a challenge. The Envision Eanes report that just came out reported back to the community that many of our teachers fear retribution if they raise concerns or disagree with our administration. I think that's a real challenge for us that we need to take on. And as a board, we need to dive in and make sure our teachers feel safe, both obviously physically safe, but also emotionally safe to be able to raise concerns or differing views of opinion. So I'd like to see us be able to compensation and take care of our teachers in that way. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's my turn. Let me go down the list here. Do you support eliminating school bus transportation? No, and I don't think anyone has said we're going to eliminate school bus transportation. So that I don't understand why someone would think that. There are options to charge parents to use it, which is what other districts do. And when you're in a tight, budget, school districts sometimes consider charging parents for transportation, but no, I don't support eliminating it. Handling of the controversy with the book, Call Me Max. Do I agree with that? I think that this more than anything points to the need for more DEI work in our community. I think that our teachers need support. This was not part of our curriculum. We haven't changed our curriculum or added anything to our elementary school curriculum for transgender education. The teacher felt unsupported though when we, based on the district response, and I think that there's some education and training to do there, which would come through a DEI program. The Gifted and Talented program, what is my vision? Both of my sons were in the Gifted and Talented program. I fully support this program. I think that there are many kids who need project-based learning. It just changes kids' minds to think about problems in a different way. And so the Gifted and Talented program is one of the best tools we have for meeting the needs of those kids, those children who need to have hands-on project-based experiences. So I love that program. I really support the Gifted and Talented program. Do I support unisex bathrooms at school? So I support making the schools a place of comfort for all kids. And from the idea of a single room with a sign on the outside that, that allows for unisex use, I don't see a problem with that. We see that at restaurants, and if anything, it actually makes it lines shorter. So I don't see a problem with that. I don't think anybody's talking about a vision where boys and girls are mixed in a room together using the restroom. I don't get that. What, if anything, do you think needs to be changed for the current AP courses? I love our AP courses. Last year, we had 432 seniors take AP exams, 1,366 AP exams, and 87% of those scored 3 or better. That's the highest in Westlake history. I think we're doing some great things, and we offer AP courses in all but 3 possible subjects. I believe it's a history class. I can't think of exactly what that is. Italian language, and Japanese language. Those are the 3 things. Otherwise, every single AP course possible is covered in our school. That's amazing. What do I think we should do different? I think we need to get our kids, all of them, back in the classroom for these AP exams. And I think we're going to see that fix itself once we're back in person. Do I support the increase of cultural enrichment education, such as adding Chinese history? So I'm going to go off topic or go maybe off to the side a little bit. I have traveled in China a lot. I love it. I love taking the train in China. I've been on hours and hours of train because I just love seeing the beautiful Chinese landscape. And when I go there for business, and when I get off the train, when I get off the plane, I go deep into the back streets. I was in I think it's called Hutong in Beijing, just traveling, walking the streets and seeing the culture. I went to Carnegie Mellon because it has a huge international community. I wanted to be there because I appreciate other communities, other cultures. I believe one of the other candidates mentioned the Spanish immersion program being a great way to share history. I think one of the great things that we can do through that Spanish immersion program is to share culture with all of our community. And I would love to see this group share the Chinese culture through perhaps cultural events. And I think that it's a great way to share and unite our community as a whole. I think it's a great opportunity. And then as far as our districts properly compensated for their work, I've stated and continue to state that our teachers work really hard, and I think that they all deserve more than they make. We are very, we have these very difficult budget challenges. And voting not to give a raise last year was really based on the actions of the Travis County Appraisal District and their refusal or inability to increase property taxes. We didn't have the money to give our teachers a raise last year. This year, we're seeing that change, and we will give raises.
Thank you. So anybody has any last minute comment? You will have 1 minute.
I haven't been able to answer.
You didn't give Jen her champagne.
All right, Jen, you go first.
Okay, thank you. Well, can I answer the questions? I haven't answered the questions yet.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh.
That's okay. Is it okay for me to go?
Oh, yes, please. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay. Thank you. I know it's a lot to manage. Do I support eliminating bus transportation? No, I do not. I was asked in another forum to give a concrete example of things that could be examined in our budget that could be reductions or changes that are far away from our classes, that keep our class sizes low and that don't impact the education for our children. School bus is a $2 million budget item, and it's something that we could examine, like James said, in many ways if we need to. School funding in the state of Texas is fundamentally flawed. We are underfunded consistently by the state of Texas. House Bill 3 in the last session did no favors for Eanes ISD and didn't give us the ability to compensate our teachers well enough. So I guess I'm jumping to the last one. No, I don't think our teachers are compensated well enough. This goes to the fundamental funding challenges that we have in the state of Texas. Do I agree with the district's handling of the reading of the book max? The district failed at communicating. The district failed at communicating with staff. The district failed at communicating with parents. This is exactly why we need our DEI program, so that we can build the systems and processes that we have in place to support our teachers, to support our families, so that if a family feels the need to opt out of a sensitive topic, they have the option, but that every child feels supported in our district. This is exactly why we need the program. What's your vision for the Gifted and Talented program? Our Gifted and Talented program is incredible. I would love to see it expanded and for more children to have the opportunity to learn in this manner. I think in particularly our twice exceptional students need to have a greater access to this program, and it's something that we have actually made a board priority. Do you support unisex bathrooms in schools? I mean, I think it's logistically, it doesn't work. Like James said, if we have an individual room that's labeled, man, woman, and anybody can use it as an individual, like in a restaurant, that's totally fine. It's pretty difficult under constraints in our schools to be able to manage that, but I think that's a great way to handle any sensitive issue like that. What, if anything, do you need to be changed with AP courses? Like James, I think you're exactly right on the ones that we don't have. There are only 3 that we don't have. It gives enormous opportunity to our students. I know with my children, we've been able to save significant amount of money with the amount of classes they've been able to opt out of in college. Walking out of high school with college credit just puts them at that much of an advantage in college. This is something that we need to continue to focus on in our high school. Do you support increasing and adding a Chinese history class? Yes, absolutely. I would love to see this happen. TEA is enormously slow at helping us with curriculum changes. They just recently approved a course for African American studies and African American history that I expect our high school to adopt in for the coming school year. And I would love it if they could help us with this. It only benefits our students. And again, no, our teachers are not compensated fairly. They're not compensated enough. This is one of the reasons I've volunteered for EEF over the years, so that we could improve class sizes, so that we can improve compensation for our staff. it fundamentally goes back to the lack of funding and the lack of emphasis that this state puts on education. So thank you. Sorry, talked really fast.
Great, you gave us a 4 seconds back. So, so I said that anybody have any comments, you could have 1 minute to share your last bit of thoughts on this particular question or overall. I'm going to lump that together since we're behind time. No? No one? All right, we have one question from our audience that I'm sure they have more questions because we want to make sure everybody's focused on what you say. So we sort of turned off the chat after a little bit when it was kind of overflowing. So the question is, back to this racial motivated incidents. That's why our district is not using, and do we have a plan to use the existing reporting system to track racially motivated incidents? The comment goes, we have lost many months where we could be tracking the success of DEI, maybe in a quantifiable way. If I understand that this would be one of the ways to show that. Anybody want to answer the question?
I'm not 100% sure I understand the question. Is it asking to better use current reporting metrics?
It's basically saying there is an existing reporting system that we could track racially motivated incidents, but our district is not using it. Why? And could we?
I'm not sure I agree that we're not using that. Some of those reporting features are required by law, and I fully believe that our district is complying with the law. I think where we could improve is identifying incidences and improving our response to that. But I agree with you in the sense that it's a good metric for us to use to track and to see progress as we move forward with our DEI program. Are we seeing a reduction in the number of incidents that are reported? And honestly, our children need to feel safe enough that they do feel comfortable reporting. And that could be part of the problem in and of itself, that students that are subject to this kind of behavior do not feel supported and safe in their ability to make those type of reports. And that again goes back to the fundamental need for a diversity, equity, and inclusion program so that every child feels safe in our schools.
Thank you. Anyone else? James?
Yeah, I'll say real quick. I believe that the specific functionality here was, I guess, turned on after some advice from Dr. Gooden and after we hired him. I have not heard any reports on this, so this is a good topic to bring up. I'll go back certainly to administration and check to see what kind of reports we're getting. But I do think that it goes back to a history of kids not feeling comfortable reporting this, or not. Perhaps it's that they don't feel like these incidents are addressed when they are reported. And I think part of that is, like I said earlier, there's some privacy that we have to keep around how other students are disciplined when these events happen, or what gets told to them, et cetera. How do we coach them on these events? And that's not public information. But I think that through a culture where we understand that these sort of incidents are not okay and we can report them, I think that we can get better at this.
Anyone else?
Well, I would just say that we absolutely should be tracking and making sure that we follow through and enforce our rules as incidents occur. If we don't have measures of success and metrics by which to refer, we will have no definition of success or know when we've achieved or made any strides toward our goal. So we absolutely have to track, and we absolutely have to report out to the community in a consistent and transparent way so that we can make sure that as a community, we all understand where we are in the process.
Thank you. I'm going to take one final question, then I'll let you go back to enjoy the few moments of your weekend. This one came from one of our audience. I'm going to read the questions directly. Because of the political nature of this election, what are the two most misleading statements or misrepresentation of facts your opponent has said to discredit you and your campaign? Please take this time to set the record straight and provide your explanation. If we all have comments, I'll go alphabetically. We start with Jennifer.
Yeah, unfortunately, there have been many misleading and inaccurate comments portrayed about me. There have been, I think one of the most significant ones is the insistence that I don't live in the district. I have lived in the district since 2004, but this misconception is apparently being driven by my opponent's supporters that I don't live in the district, which is absolutely false. I do not own a home in the district. I sold my house last year and I'm renting while I look for a new home. And you all know the market, it's a little challenging right now. So I will be finding something soon, I hope. But I absolutely live in the district, and anybody who discounts my commitment to this community just needs to look at my record of service to this district for the past 17 to 18 years. I've volunteered and given an enormous amount of time to this district, and the fact that is not going to change, and that's why I'm running again, because this district needs experience and expertise going forward. There have been some concerns about the fact that I changed my name, which is disappointing that, personal choices are being attacked, but I did get a divorce 2 years ago and I chose to go back to my maiden name, and, things happen in life and we move forward, and I've focused on moving forward and keeping my children happy and safe in their lives. And so I think those are the two most upsetting things that have been floated about me. And so I hope that sets the record straight. Thanks.
Thank you. You're perfect on time. We're going to move on to alphabetically. That will be James.
Yep. So two things. First, I've heard my opponent brought it up at the end of the elementary forum that I won't have kids in the district. My youngest is a senior. And I think that even on this call today, there are several parents whose children are out of school. And the reality is that if our school board was representative of our community makeup, 5 out of the 7 board members would be people who don't have kids in our school. 70% of the residents of our district do not have children in our school. The idea that a parent, that their kids graduate and then they stop caring about Eanes ISD, I find utterly ridiculous. We all care about education, first of all. Second of all, we all care about education in our district. And third, and I think it's worth mentioning, we all care about the value of our homes, and our school district drives a big part of that. I have a passion for this job. This is not a hobby. This is a job for me, and I love it. And I'm ready to sign up to keep going, even without children in the district, because I have 8,000 children, your children, to look out for. Second of all, my opponent says that our board votes 7-0 on everything. That's absolutely absurd. I personally have lost votes where I've been the only person voting yay, and 6 people have voted no. I've lost votes 5-2. I've lost votes 4-3. This is ridiculous. We are all independent. Now, we do talk and we do get along, and I think that's important for us to be able to work together, not to have hate and discord and all kinds of problems on our board, but to have people who can work together for the good of all 8,000 children. Thank you.
This is a great question. So first of all, I really have tried to just spend my time talking about myself as opposed to my opponent. And so I will say the only thing that I've directly heard her say that's incorrect is she said that I did not support PPE or social distancing as we returned back to school last fall, and that's not true. And actually out of my own pocket spent my own money and raised a lot of money to provide PPE in the schools. But her supporters have done a really good job of absolutely demonizing me. And it started last fall. And I've been attacked and called absolutely anything you can think of that's horrible, and then some things you don't ever want to think of that are horrible. My children have been threatened. My home's been threatened. My business has been threatened. My friends' businesses have all been threatened. And this is all because my thoughts are different than theirs. And I find that troubling. You know, I'll tell you who I am. I'm a mom. I'm a wife, I'm a sister and a daughter. I'm a community volunteer. I serve on a number of boards across this community, and I care a great deal about Austin and Eanes and all of our families. Anybody who knows me will tell you that I am a force and I am a strong woman. I won't apologize for that. And I won't apologize for fighting for what I believe in. And I won't apologize for fighting for my kids. And I won't apologize for fighting for yours. Eanes has gotten off track, and I hear from families daily that are pulling their kids out of our schools because of it. I think we can do better. I will do better. I appreciate the time today, and I appreciate the chance to do this. I also want to thank everyone for starting a little earlier because I have a graduation party for my son tonight, and 4 minutes until my home is full of people. But this was important to me. Eanes is a special community. We're about to be 150 years old. That's a celebration we should all wrap our hands and arms around and embrace. We're top ranked in the country for years. We're going to remain top ranked with me on the board. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Regarding the children in the district, I think it is important to have kids in the district when you're on the board. I think it gives a up-to-date perspective of what's going on. It's feedback. It makes you be part of what's going on. I've never discounted James for not having kids. I'm just saying that's an attribute that I have kids, 2 special ed kids, by the way, in the district. So, you know, in terms of the comment about the 7-0, go look at the record last year. You know, there was one time I believe that he voted against, well, 2. One was an extension. One was regarding the giving their power back to, you know, getting it back from the superintendent. I think that happened in the summer, but most of the time he's goes along with everybody else. And so we need voices on this board. They're going to, you know, ask questions, they're going to represent everyone and make sure that we're not just doing what we want to do just so we can get along with everybody. So I don't think there's, you know, look at the record on that. I think Eanes is a great place. I think a lot of people moved here because of the education. I think they want to retain and hire the best teachers. You know, they want to focus on the core curriculum and not political agendas. You know, and they want to be transparent and know and trust that the board's going to do, you know, what's good for all stakeholders. And so, you know, that's why I'm running. I think I give a unique perspective, having kids that, you know, particularly special ed that no one else really has on that board. So I'd love to get your vote, love to earn your vote. I think Eanes is great, and I would love to continue its excellence. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick that I'm grateful that Nigel wasn't able to point out 2 things that I'm saying about him, because I'm running a very clean, positive campaign, and I'm proud of that. Thanks, Nigel.
And James, I haven't heard anything either, so I would have said.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate all the candid answers to our questions. And thank you to all 4 of you for coming to share your thoughts with us again tonight, this afternoon. We share your passion for wanting to make our excellent school district even better. And we appreciate your willingness to contribute your time and the effort to this no pay and sometimes thankless job. We wish you all the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So
Great
much.
chapter.
Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Yeah, great weekend.
Bye.
Take care.